Hello Mr. Yechury, welcome to our show Badi Badi Baatein.
Uniformity does not mean equality. They want to foment polarization in the run-up to 2024. Yes, you're right, our strength in the parliament has reduced significantly. Children are being born. There's no immunization, no nutritious food.
What do you think should be the qualities that India Alliance Prime Minister should have?
First of all, being competent.
Hello Mr. Yechury, welcome to the Quint and Quint Hindi.
Thank you.
And welcome to our show Badi Badi Baatein. As I ask all my guests, what does this term Badi Badi Baatein mean to you politically today?
Well, the choti baatein becoming badi badi is what is politics all about. And that is what I think we have to focus on. Because choti baatein are the baatein that are directly connected with the life and death issues of our people, which unfortunately are actually badi badi baatein, but they are treated as choti baatein. So to convert these choti baatein into badi badi baatein, that is what is the first thing that comes to my mind to take up.
Speaking of a little history, we all have we all have read about your speech that you had given before then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ji. Your protests, your days in the JNU is well documented, well spoken about. Today, in the present times, how do you see student politics and how do you see the dispensations respond to student protests?
Well, what I see as far as student politics is concerned, I mean, they are as concerned about issues that we were concerned when we were students. When we were fighting the emergency for our democratic rights, for the restoration of democracy, etc., students today are fighting for their own rights in the institutions, in the universities. And they are under assault, which was not as widespread in our time, though you had an official emergency, a declared curtailment of democratic rights. But here you have an undeclared curtailment, infringement that runs across a variety of higher education institutions in a very, very different forms. When the victims of these attacks are the ones that actually face the persecution of the state. And such attacks come out of sheer hatred. In institutions of any educational institution, for that matter, it is basically a battle of ideas, a battle of exchange of ideas, and it is through this battle of ideas actually creativity emerges. Now, instead of having these exchanges, if you have blows and physical exchanges, then the whole purpose is destroyed.
Speaking of hatred, we are currently living in a time where we are seeing an overlap of religion and mainstream politics like never before. Many say that, we always had hatred in our minds, these things were always being said in the four walls of people's homes, but never were they allowed to be normalized or popularized. Do you believe there was always this undercurrent in the country?
Well, there always was an undercurrent. I mean, the degree would vary, how strong or how weak or whatever it is. But there's always an undercurrent. I mean, that is something that is part of your historical psychological makeup. Let's say the British rule, the policy of divide and rule. But the question is whether you remember it and it acts, or you are made to remember it. You are reminded to remember it and therefore act. There's a big, vast difference between the two. And what is happening today is that you are made to remember these animosities. And therefore, you bring in that sort of hostility into normal behavior.
Speaking of divide, the CPIM is vehemently opposing, the left parties are vehemently opposing any talks of a uniform civil code. There are campaigns also going on in Kerala. You have said that it is only being brought to create more divide in the society, especially between Hindus and Muslims. Would you like to elaborate on that thought?
No, the point is, what is this uniform civil code that you're talking of? What is uniformity on what? On one issue, the CPIM has been consistent, and we have relentlessly campaigned, that is the equal rights for women, and on the question of gender justice and gender rights. But the UCC is much more than that. It's not only, so uniformity does not mean equality. Uniformity on what? Now you have every single community has its own personal rights and laws which govern their societal behavior. Even within the large section of what are called the Hindus. Now, I come from a Hindu family background. My maternal uncle can marry his sister's daughter, but that's not allowed in somebody next door within that Hindu community. There are communities where you can marry your first cousin. Then you have to, are you going to uniformize all of them? Are you going to now say that there cannot be any Khap panchayats? Then you have also a large ambit of laws, practices that are related to tax laws. You have the Hindu undivided family. Will that be abolished? A chief minister of a northeastern state, after meeting the Union Home Minister, comes out and says the Union Home Minister is assured that the Uniform Civil Code will not apply to the tribals. Now, that has been said for the Christians also. The Sikhs and the Parsis have already said that they have been assured this doesn't apply to them. So, whom does it apply to? Who is left? Not Christians, not tribals, not Sikhs, not Parsis. Then who is it? Only Muslims that is left. The aim is very clear, no, obvious. They want to foment polarization in the run-up to 2024. So for that, they have again rigged up this issue without any concrete draft. We are saying, give us the draft.
Many who are arguing or speaking in favor of the UCC, they give polygamy, especially in the Muslim community, as one of the reasons, saying that it will abolish polygamy, it is about rights for women. Do you think that issue won't be addressed via something like a UCC?
Polygamy is already, under the law, it's illegal. All your census show, that there is more polygamy among the Hindus than among the Muslims. Now, if you want to reform these personal laws and personal practices, the way it should be done is by bringing them together and discussing these issues with them, not through a fiat and creating conflicts. And I'm sure if you just take that initiative, call them and say that in this modern society, according to Indian law, polygamy is not allowed, except that your personal practices may permit it. But that is something which runs against this law, so therefore that will have to be reformed. You bring in men, women, all of them of the community and democratically discuss with them.
Speaking of laws, the Home Minister on the last day of the Parliament introduced a bill reforming the criminal system and brought in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Now, he specifically mentioned that there are going to be no provisions for sedition in it. But when you read the fine print, you have section 150, which I would just like to read out certain highlights of it. One is the words like electronic communication or by use of financial means. Another is the concept of encouraging feelings of separatist activities. How do you see this section in the new criminal system?
I think it's made it worse than the original sedition. Sedition law itself was an anachronism. It should have gone when we became independent. But what has come in its place is actually more draconian. It enlarges the ambit and draws in various other areas into its ambit through which people can be persecuted. So I think it's more draconian and dangerous. That's why we said all these changes that have been brought about, they need to be subjected to much more intense not merely discussion but scrutiny.
Talking about the CPIM, in 2004, the party saw its highest tally in terms of number of seats. Today, the tally has substantially been reduced to 3. What do you think and where do you think the party lacked over the past 2 decades? Do you think there were some improvements that could be made?
Of course, there are improvements that could be made, and there always could be made. And the other aspect, yes, you're right. Our strength in the parliament has reduced significantly, but when you measure the relevance or the impact of a particular political point of view on the society, as far as the communists are concerned, one yardstick is your electoral presence. That's important. There's a decline undoubtedly, but the other yardstick is also the ability to influence the national agenda through popular struggles. Now, on that score, if you look at it, the communist relevance has in fact increased, whether it's the farmer struggle that you had, and probably the only thing on which Prime Minister Modi was forced to withdraw, the only thing where he had to step back, when he had no other option. Because what is happening in there's a mega loot of your national assets.
Yeah.
There's a large-scale privatization of our public property and public services, and now even utilities are being privatized. And there, if you look at it, it is the communists and their organizations that are actually setting the agenda.
But do you think somewhere these populist struggles are not getting converted electorally for the left?
That is, of course it is. They are getting converted into electoral successes of those who are standing firm against these policies of the Modi government. And in areas where there are other regional forces, other regional parties who are playing that role, even the left vote goes to them to do this. Therefore, I think the stage where we independently would do the polling for our party and our policies, etc., that in our system itself, such situation is no longer, as it used to be earlier.
You visited Manipur last week. How is the situation there right now?
Terrible. Difficult to describe it. There is a complete divide, because the airport is in the Meitei area. Is the Meitei and the Kuki tribes, basically the conflict is. It's an ethnic conflict. You land in the Meitei area. If you want to go into the Kuki area, no Meitei can go with you. There are 3 levels of checkposts, not banned by security forces, manned by their people, who check to see if a Meitei is going into Kuki area. Likewise, whether a Kuki is coming into a Meitei area. So when I had to travel, we visited both areas, went to relief camps in both the things, and the conditions there are very appalling. And when you had to cross into the Kuki area, we had to leave behind the Meiteis with us. My party's Manipur secretary is a Meitei. Conditions in the relief camps is terrible. Children are being born. There's no immunization, no nutritious food. How the mothers and the child will be taken care of. Though we appeal to the governor, she has assured us that they'll ensure separate relief camps for such people, such situations. But then the question is, it's nearly 4 months now, and the situation continues to worsen. Naturally, if there's no initiative to resolve it, you have the Nagas also there. But now, the second day we were there was an attack, and 3 Kukis were killed in a militant attack. And then the Nagas had to respond, saying that this is happening on Naga lands. No, if you start doing these things on our lands, we can't keep quiet. Yeah. If this spreads into the northeast, then it's going to play havoc.
One of the allegations that the BJP or even the Prime Minister keeps making is that in West Bengal, the left and the Congress are attacked by the party workers of the TMC. But none of these parties or even any other partners of the India alliance ever say a word about it. How do you respond to that?
Why don't they say? They say. Of course they say. Of course we fight. I mean, in Kerala, it's directly between the Congress and us. That is why the BJP doesn't get single MLA, forget an MP elected. So this is something what the Prime Minister is repeating is something we have been hearing for the last 30 years. 30, yeah, more than the 30 years. He said, Delhi mein dosti, Bengal mein kushti. This was what we've been hearing for 30 years. And still, I mean, you had the UPA government, you had the United Front government.
Where does the CPIM stand in terms of making a seat sharing compromise in Kerala or West Bengal with the Congress or the TMC?
No, with the Bengal, the thing doesn't arise because Bengal is the CPIM, the Congress and the secular forces, which take on both the BJP and the TMC. The BJP wants us to cooperate there with the TMC against them because then they will be the only ones reaping on the anti-incumbency of the TMC. Similarly, in Kerala, they want us to do what they are saying because then they will be the only opposition party left.
Considering the popularity of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, do you think the India alliance, in order to counter the BJP, will have to come up with a prime ministerial candidate or a face or a name?
This is something again we have heard so much in the past. In the 2004 election, what was it? Who is the alternative to Vajpayee? Does the opposition have any alternative? What happened? Alternative emerged or no after elections? And the alternative lasted for 10 years or no? Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister for 10 years. People in India vote for their MPs, not for the Prime Minister. However much you may try to convert it into a presidential form. Eventually, when you press the button, it's the button you are pressing for a candidate there.
If it comes to it, what do you think should be the criteria or the qualities that India Alliance Prime Ministerial face should have?
Well, first of all, being competent. Second, actually getting down to doing the work and not only publicity driven. And thirdly, most importantly, work out a policy direction with the approval of the entire alliance, which is the common minimum program we talk of, and adhere to it by implementing it. These are the three essential elements for good governance, and that is what it has to be.
We have all heard what the India Alliance is fighting against: the misuse of central agencies, division, polarization, etc. If the India Alliance wins, what would it as a government be able to offer the country that the BJP cannot and does not?
First of all, stop all this that the BJP is doing. What you mentioned, the misuse, the assaults on the Constitution, the assaults on the people's guarantees provided by the Constitution, the assaults on the marginalized sections, particularly women and the Dalits and the tribals. The second is to address the basic problems of where are your jobs now? You promised 2 crore jobs a year. Where are they? And what is happening with this galloping price rise now of essential commodities? You see, this entire question of taking India to the 3rd position as the global economy, there is no need for, irrespective of who is the Prime Minister, in 2027, India is going to be the 3rd economy in the world. That is your statistical trend. It could be X, Y, Z as the Prime Minister. You will achieve it. You don't require A, B or C. But then what is the gap? You're number 3, you'll be 1/6 of number 1. You'll be 1/5 of number 2. USA and China. And then you'll be the 3rd. With a per capita income ranking standing at 142 out of 180 countries. Now, if that is going to satisfy you as being our 3rd largest economy, but look at the standards of our people. So the question is that India, what and how do you distribute the wealth that is generated?
Mr. Yechury, thank you so much for your time. It was an absolutely insightful conversation, and thank you so much for giving your time to the Quint and Quint Hindi.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir.